But how much can we give Western Armenia, Nakhichevan, now part of Artsakh, and all this? It keeps going, and I know this is a long conversation, but at some point, maybe next time you're on, we'll talk about this. I do want to bring one more point before we end, because we could talk forever, especially with your knowledge. It's really fascinating to me to talk to someone like you. Shushi specifically, your ideas about Shushi, your ideas about what took place, and now we no longer have Shushi, and maybe some historical ideas about specific to Shushi. Have we ever lost it before? We took it back in '92. I think it was May 8 or 9 when we took it back in '92. But any time before that, where we lost Shushi completely, like we are about to do, and we got it back. Do you remember? I know I'm putting you on the spot, but does that anything come to mind?
No, that's fine. Yeah, Shushi has definitely been conquered by invading powers. But whether or not the actual cliff face that the city now resides on was passed over by the warring armies themselves, I'm not so sure. Because the mountain fastnesses of what they call mountainous Nagorno-Karabakh, which is basically, the part that was the autonomous province of Nagorno-Karabakh, the mountain fastnesses in that region were the least invaded parts of Eastern Armenia. In other words, those parts were the least run over by the Turkic tribes and Tamerlane and the Mongols, Genghis Khan, etc. But many times in history, they were taken, or at least the land around them was taken as part of constituent empires. Like the Black Sheep and White Sheep Turks, the Karakoyunlu and the Akkoyunlu, they controlled those regions in the 14th and 15th centuries. But they allowed autonomy to the Artsakhes in a lot of ways where they weren't, they might have had to pay taxes and things like that. So they were part of these constituent empires. So if you say conquered, yeah, it's been controlled before. Conquered is a hard thing to define. When we think of conquered, we think of enemy tanks rolling in and them destroying our church, that kind of thing, destroying the homes or killing people. In past times, it's hard to say. When they talk about Armenian history, even the Armenian history books, a lot of times they talk about remote mountain fastnesses in Karabakh that were unpenetrable. They couldn't get up the mountains. They don't always say exactly which mountains it was, but yes, it is that region that was largely, I don't want to say left alone, but the Melikdoms of Karabakh, the 5 Melikdoms, which were Armenian controlled, they were mostly run by the Hassan Jalalians, Armenian royal family, from like the 10th to 15th centuries, 10th to 17th centuries. They maintained autonomy throughout the worst period of Armenian history, which I would say the worst period is probably like the 11th through 17th centuries, as far as like just constant warfare in our land, just constant just burning of the land, destroying of the people, just over and over and over. Those Melikdoms survived that worst catastrophe of Armenian history, minus the genocide, and survived the genocide as well. So in some ways, yeah, maybe unconquered up to this point, but definitely controlled by various empires over the years. And I wanted to touch on one more thing that you said, Tigran, about how many more times can they divide us? And it's a really good question, because it harkens back at the thing I said about the radicalization of Armenian people around the world, how this is only going to make people more and angry more and more times, of course, and it's going to just make people be completely fed up. And then what do you do? But more importantly, it also speaks to the history of the Assyrians. When you look at the Assyrian people, they're one of the other big indigenous peoples of West Asia, much like us. They share like 90-something% of the same DNA as us. And they were like, historical enemies of the army. Like, we used to fight them back in the day, but now we're like the 2 only people left from that time who were, from those ancient days, and of course have been allies since at least before the genocide. You look at how their land, they call it the Assyrian Triangle. It's kind of like where the northern Iraq the river system in northern Iraq, how that was split up and destroyed, and other people moved in, Kurds, Arabs, Turkomans, other groups of people moved in on their land over and over and over time until they became a minority in their own homeland. We saw that with Western Armenia as well. And you can see it with a lot of people of the Caucasus. There's a lot of tribes in the Caucasus people don't talk about because they don't even know they exist because there's so few of them. And not to go too deeply, but I want to mention this because it's a big part of Azerbaijan's official BS dialogue that they give in reference to anything historical. And they always want to talk about Caucasian Albania, which for my layman friends has nothing to do with the Albania and the Balkans. It's a whole different country. We Armenians call it Agvank, and it was also called Aran many times in the history of the region. These Caucasian Albanians, as it were, most likely were almost completely wiped out by the Oghuz Turks when they arrived in this region via Central Asia. The ones who remained mostly became who we call the Udi, the Udi tribe. They lived just northeast of the Armenians in what is now kind of northwest Azerbaijan. And there are some that live in Tavush, I think Tavush province in Armenia. There's maybe 2,000, 1,000 left total of these people. They have their own language, their own culture. They are the remnants of probably what the Caucasian Albanians were, not the Azerbaijani, at least not the people of the Republic of Azerbaijan. They are not the benefactors of the Caucasian Albanian civilization, if you want to call it that. The Caucasian Albanian civilization was a civilization that Mesrop Mashtots gave an alphabet to, that Gregory the Illuminator gave a religion to, and that the Armenians pretty much governed through most of its history, the Armenians and the Persians, until the Turks came. And then it became Turkified, and what was left of those people are this tiny little tribe that had been massacred over and over by Oghuz Turks until the point where now their tribal lands are a tiny little piece inside Azerbaijan. They've been completely forgotten. They're so forgotten that they're not even one of the main minority groups that Azerbaijan worries about, the Lezgin in the north and the Talish in the south. They don't even talk about the Udi because the Udi have been so successfully pushed away, pushed aside, ethnically cleansed, however you want to put it, Turkified and removed, assimilated, whatever, that nobody even talks about them anymore. These are the Caucasian Albanians, if you want to really know them, and probably some Armenian people in the eastern parts of Armenia. Those are the Caucasian Albanians. So like whenever they use this as a talking point, it's definitely not them. They aren't those people, and they killed those people, so it's hypocrisy over and over again. We want to, they'll claim it for us once we're all gone, and they can pretend to be us because they do have some of our DNA from enslaving us for thousands of years. But they'll claim our stuff too as, well, this is Armenian, once all the Armenians are gone.
Yeah.
Once we're all dead. And if you don't look at it like that, you don't have a firm sense of reality on the ground. That's how they feel. This is speaking from their side, So you just got to be cognizant of the facts and the history when it comes to that kind of stuff, because they are so not,